if there's one thing that always kind of gets on my nerves, it's when people take the Bible too seriously. Now, you might think that I mean something kind of weird there, and I don't, but you know how sometimes you read something that's funny in there, and people try as hard as they can to make it not be funny? They just try to make it like it's like the Bible is this super serious, it never jokes around, it never kids, and it's never sarcastic. But if you've ever actually paid attention to the Bible, you know that's not exactly how it works. And I bring this up because our reading from John this morning is hilarious. I mean, you've got this pattern that we already have kind of shown for us out of 2 Kings, where a little bit of food goes a long way. But the way that Jesus does this, it's hard not to laugh. So you've got this whole crowd of people gathered up to listen to Jesus and to be healed by Jesus. And Jesus is just sitting on top of this mountain, and he's teaching, and he looks over at his disciple Philip and says, "Philip, there's a lot of people out there. Where can we get bread for them?" You got to feel bad for Philip at this point. Because Philip is over here, and I can just see him looking out at this huge crowd, and Jesus just put him on the spot. And he's looking out, and he's going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 50, 150, 500, 1,000, 2,000. Uh-oh. Exactly. So Philip, I can see Philip going up and going to Jesus, "Boss, there's a couple tons of people out there, and bread's not the most expensive in the world, but it's not exactly cheap, and all this walking around with you kind of has ruined our cash flow. So, Now, I have to imagine that there's a little kid sitting towards the front row. And this little kid is looking at the disciples scrambling around trying to figure out how to feed all these people. And he looks down and he sees his lunch. And in logic that only works with children says, "I bet this could help." And so he walks up to one of the disciples, it happens to be Andrew, and says, "Hey," tugging on his shirt, "you can use my lunch if you want to." Now, Andrew, being an adult, probably sees this kid and this lunch and says, "It's not going to get very far, but I've seen Jesus do weirder stuff, so let's see what happens." So Andrew comes up to Jesus and says, "Teacher, I didn't really find much, but there's this little guy here, and he's got 5 crackers and 2 sardines. That's all I got." Now, Jesus isn't shaken by this at all, because Jesus, as John so eloquently put us, already knew what he was going to do. So he has the people sit down, he gets the crackers and the sardines, and he gives thanks and gives it out to the disciples. Now I can imagine the disciples now thinking, what am I going to do with half a cracker and like a fifth of a sardine? This isn't going to go anywhere. But the more they keep giving the food away, the more there is. The more people come up, the more food they keep having. So much that not only did everyone have a little, everyone ate until they were full. And then when it was all said and done, they didn't just have a little bit of leftovers. They had 12 basketfuls of leftover bread and fish that they collected at the end. Even this little bit of food fed 5,000 men, and that's not counting probably another 5,000 or so women, plus another 5,000 or so probably kids. That's a lot of people. Jesus took an itty-bitty amount of food and made a lot out of it. It's the kind of thing that Paul starts talking about in Ephesians 3, that God is able to do so much more than we can possibly imagine. It's kind of what he does. God takes small things and does an amazing amount of work with them. When we feel like we have nothing to offer God, or that what we have to offer God is so small and unimportant that it shouldn't, to our minds, it doesn't matter, that's the kind of things that God likes to use. I can't tell you how many times I stand up here, I look at my sermon and go, this is garbage. This is going to do absolutely no good for the kingdom of God. I'm just going to run my mouth for 10 minutes and then sit down and hope nobody falls asleep. I can't tell you how many times that happens. But the smallest things that we bring to offer to God, he can use in amazing ways. And it's all to bring glory not to ourselves, but to him. These small things that we offer, the people wanted to make Jesus a king at this point because he did something cool. But that's not what Jesus wanted. Jesus wanted God to have the glory. Jesus wanted the attention to be on God and not on him. So these little things that we offer to him are not to make ourselves look better, but to make God look better. And we all have these times in our lives when we feel like the only thing we have to give is crackers and sardines. The only things that we have to offer are so insignificant that we think that they can't make any difference at all. But when we offer that freely to God, when we give that to him and say, use this for your glory, that's when God can do amazing things. Just like God took that small lunch and fed a multitude of people, the small things that we can offer can have an enormous impact on the kingdom of God. So much so that even a child's lunch can feed a multitude. Because that's how God works. In one of Paul's letters, he writes, God uses the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He uses the small things and not the large. He does things in ways that don't make sense to us, but all to further his kingdom in this world, to shine his light even bigger than it already is, and to make his name known to all people, that everyone might know the good news that he has for us.